What is up, friends? Welcome to my day off and my glorious afternoon in my backyard. The light is finally conducive to me coming on here to talk to you. I hope the wind is not making this unbearable. I wanted to come on and talk about breath work and breathing in the way that I've begun talking about it more recently in my classes. I've gotten some questions because the honest truth is, in the class itself, it's a little bit hard to go into as much depth as I would like to because it's a movement class, not a breathwork class, and we could spend some substantial time working on discussing and practicing this. So I wanted to make this video so you can sort of outsource that component of the class because it is critical. It's very important. Now, breathwork, that term can mean a lot of different things in a lot of contexts, and that's because breathing does so many things in the body. From oxygenating our tissue, which is clearly a part of your daily life, all of our daily life, as well as a movement class when we want to be circulating our blood, oxygenated blood ideally, to our tissues, right? That's a huge benefit of movement. But also, one of the things that we're doing in my class is working on our posture and our spinal health. We're mobilizing our spine and we're stabilizing our spine. And I want to focus on the stabilization for the moment because part of your breath work can play a huge, or does play, needs to play a huge role in spinal stability. So that's the type of breath work that we're going to discuss here, and in as much as it's valuable, I will distinguish it from breath work you might otherwise do in other contexts for like relaxation exercises and things like that when you're not otherwise doing something that is specifically taxing on your spine. Constructively taxing, right? Constructively taxing meaning it's exercise. We're building and strengthening and conditioning the muscles around our spine. Okay, so breath work. I start the classes recently, I've been starting the classes recently, asking people to take big, deep diaphragmatic breaths. And how do we know if we're breathing with our diaphragm and not the way I tend to do throughout the day because I'm a horrible breather and this is a really big deal that I'm personally working on. A lot of us just breathe sort of into our chest. I barely breathe, and you saw my belly come in, but that's because I'm showing this on the video. In real life, I catch myself barely breathing, like all the time, and it's a big problem. It's a big problem. Work on that. Posture, hydration, and breathing, and exercising your feet. That's my, not trifecta, my quadfecta, whatever that is. Those are some really important principles. Okay, I digress. In class, we want to breathe diaphragmatically. Our diaphragm is located between our bottommost rib and about rib 7. So it's this sort of slice of ribs at the base of your rib cage, right? Generally speaking. Lots of muscles come into respiration, inhaling and exhaling. We're going to focus on the diaphragm to keep things pretty simple. The diaphragm operates, in case this isn't common knowledge, it operates like a vacuum. It pulls in air by expanding, right? The action is to expand, drawing in air like a vacuum, and then it contracts to push air out. And it can do so with more or less muscularity, right? You can inhale kind of passively the way I catch myself doing all day, which my diaphragm is working on like 5% power, barely inhaling and exhaling, or I can intentionally inhale and give a lot of muscular assistance to the inhale and exhale. That's just sort of the intensity. Now let's talk about the placement of the air. My dog looked at me like, whoa, you are into that breathing right now. So what the exercise we're doing in class, I know my elbows are kind of cut off, but just generally speaking, is we put our hands on our bottommost ribs. My spine is long. I'm standing when I do this typically, and I pull in. And you could see, if you watch my elbows, right, or you watch my hand, that my hands are moving. Right? And you're looking for that. And hopefully you have the shoulder range of motion and this position doesn't hurt you. If you do, someone else can put their ribs on you. And ideally your thumb is more on your back than I'm demonstrating here just for the perspective. And you will be able to feel pressure into those fingers and the thumb, and that you're breathing out and slightly forward, but more out and back and in, as opposed to lifting the chest. That's telling you that you're actually breathing into your diaphragm. And here's why that matters for us in our movement class and how it relates to your spinal health. It's because as you breathe into your diaphragm, like I said, is expanding. As it expands and fills with air, it is also developing a certain amount of internal pressure, right? Just like a balloon would, just like when you fill in, as contents, the air has pressure, right? It has substance. We don't think of that, but it has substance. It's creating pressure inside your diaphragm. And it forces the diaphragm to move organs and stuff out of the way, which is why your belly extends, unless you do anything about it. If I breathe a nice big breath into my diaphragm, my belly also puffs up, which is beautiful, and that's how babies breathe, and I need to practice that more often, and we should all do some nice, deep, soft, restorative belly breathing every day when it's safe for our spine, and I don't need a supported spine because that's not a very supported spine. Let's talk about why by looking at sort of a contrasting expression of breathing, and that is breathing that specifically creates and regulates intra-abdominal pressure. Now, a certain amount of pressure is created, and that's what and just inherently, if you belly breathe, right? Because that's the pressure that moved my organs out of the way, was the pressure of the air. But I want to be able to create more pressure specifically for functional, safe spinal movement, which means I want to create more pressure from the outside on that air I'm pulling in. So the air creates the mass inside. It expands the contents of my thoracic and abdominal cavity, and then I can contain it within different shapes. So if I don't contain it at all and it just explodes into my belly or expands into my belly, then I didn't really create much pressure. I allowed the pressure to yield with the distension of my abdominal muscles, and then I let it out. Nice soft system. However, if I engage my abs, right, so make a fist with your tummy muscles, brace, 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 squeeze your abs and then breathe in and don't let the abs move, now that air pushes up against a wall, right? It pushes up against a wall, and the more air I breathe in and the more muscular resistance I provide from my abdominal muscles, then the organs don't have anywhere to go, right? And it makes me into a tighter, more compact, but also more pressurized cylinder from the inside out. And that pressure is not only pushing into my abs, it's pushing into the muscles of my back, and guess where else? All around my spine. That air turns into almost what you could think of as like bubble wrap on the inside of your body for your spine. So rather than, sending your spine in a box that's just, it's going to rattle around inside or have no support, your spine, not that your spine is as delicate as like a glass vase or something like that, let's have a little respect for the body, but if I'm going to send it, I'm going to roll it in bubble wrap and I'm going to put it in a box, and I don't want it to get rattled around. I want it to make the trip safely. Inside our body, we can do something similar. Whenever I'm going to be subjecting my spine to some movement, which hopefully isn't quite that chaotic, but what if it's a, roller coaster, right? Then I want to be using some intra-abdominal pressure so that it's not just getting whiplash around in there. I want to pressurize from the inside. Other things contribute to my spinal health as well, like the muscles also on the outside of my body, lengthening my spine and holding it in a position from the outside. So the spine is made safe and stable in this case. Like a healthy spine, a healthy spine requires movement. Movement is not bad for your spine. Let's be very clear. If movement were bad for your spine, it would be a solid rod of bone like my femur that isn't allowed to move, right? The spine is multiple bones and this beautiful, engineering for lots of supple movement. But there's a time and place. You want it to be able to move, and then you need it to be able to stabilize. And that's what this intra-abdominal engineering system is for. It's genius. And we don't really use it because we don't really understand it, and we breathe like garbage, and we just kind of unlearn how to do this from our collapsed, sad lifestyle, to be very honest. So we have to relearn. Babies learn this, and then we unlearn it because we send them to school and they sit all day. So, sorry, that's just my not so humble opinion about that. So, as a non-parent and a non-teacher. Okay, I digress. Back to breathing and back to spinal safety. So the spine needs to move, but we don't want it to just move willy-nilly. We want to be able to support it. And in different arrangements of movement, and depending on how much, if you're lifting something, at what degree, are you lifting something straight up? Are you lifting something against gravity? Like in different orientations to gravity, etc. Is it just your body weight? Is it a big cardboard box? Is it something you can keep close to your center? These things are going to create different demands against gravity, plus the mass of weight of whatever the load is that your body is bearing. These are going to create different equations of how much stability you require to do the movement safely. But we need the ability to create movement in our spine, which comes from first lengthening the spine, creating movement that doesn't create mortaring and pestling of the vertebra and the joint and the nerves that come out from our spinal column, right? We want first decompress to mobilize, and then also at every place we want to put our spine in that beautiful mobility that we have, right? Forward and back flexion and extension, lateral flexion, and what we think of lateral flexion and extension, and then rotational movements and all the combinations thereof. At each position of the spine, we also need to say, could I stabilize here? And the answer has to be yes. And one of the ways that that is yes is from having the ability to regulate intra-abdominal pressure first and foremost, start on the inside, and then layer more strength, more stabilization, more fortification with the superficial abdominal muscles. It's because, just like that packaging example, I can put my spine, I can put my glass vase, pretend it's something really fragile. I can put it in a box, and that box can be extremely well fortified, right? It's a really solid double layer cardboard box. It's going to be fine for the trip, right? The corners wouldn't even be damaged. That's the equivalent of having really strong abs, really strong superficial muscles. But if I don't have the bubble wrap inside, the glass could still break because it's going to be shaking around inside. So we all need to practice both elements. I want a strong shipping container that I'm going to go and journey around in for my spine, and I also want the insulation that is created through air pressurization with this ingenious system of my respiration, not only for my brain and to oxygenate my whole body, but having this dual purpose of helping me support and stabilize my spine, among all the other benefits of what your breath and your breathing is doing for your internal organs and everything else. So please, again, the conversation of the importance of breath is massive. I'm just looking at one slice because I teach a movement class, how breath works in the class for the way we are conditioning our spine. And so in the class, for example, I might say now is a great time for a nice, big, juicy inhale without putting a lot of pressure on those abs. Let your belly expand. Let your body expand because we're not loading our spine. And then I also might say, abs, compress the air. I'm about to load my spine against gravity in something like a deep front lunge, and I don't want any shearing force on my spine, so I want air pressure on the inside, abdominal and back muscle fortification from the outside, so I'm moving my spine through space with safety in mind. Safety as part of the strengthening exercise. All right, guys, this is a long video, but I hope this is helpful. Several of you have wanted more information. Please know you can practice your breathing anytime, any place, given that you have clean air, which is a real blessing. I will say I'm very grateful at this exact moment that no one's doing laundry or smoking near me. It's just delightful to be out in some reasonably fresh air. Hope you're finding some fresh air. Practice your breath work. Try different options. Check, how do you breathe on a daily basis? What's your breath default? Do you find, like me, that I catch myself not breathing well? Totally suboptimal, man. So it's just as bad as finding myself with shitty posture. It's basic, and I need to do it. It's free, it's basic, I can practice it at all times. So my posture and my breathing, there's no excuse for not trying to make them part of my mindful awareness of my body practice. So please, check in. What's your breath default? How fast? How deep or shallow? Try belly breathing. Try just a nice relaxed maximum inhale, maximum release of your belly so that the muscles can distend, and then practice bracing your abs. You might not have a lot of control of your abdominal muscles. You might have to just practice engaging your abs, right? Engaging your abs, and then which is a whole separate video, right? But then the next piece is, can you combine the inhalation and the air pressure that you magnify with the abdominal resistance and intensity. So I hope this is useful, everybody. Love you to pieces. Ask questions below. Join me in class if you can, from whatever time zone, whatever part of the world that you happen to be finding this video. And thank you so much for watching.